So if you're going to play 3 FaceIT game, 4 FaceIT game of an evening, write down 3 things you want to get better at, or 3 things you want to do well in that game. I want to communicate. I want to be the best communicator on the server. I want to nail all of my utility. I want to bring a lot of energy to the server, whatever it might be, right? 3 intentions.
Jack Burwhistle is a leading expert in performance, coaching Team of the Year 2025. Vitality.
Players, even if you're trying to get better, you should definitely leave aside time just to enjoy the game. Don't make every minute you're on CS about improving, because you got to remember you got into this game because you love it.
His approach and impact on the Counter-Strike was unmatched in recent times. What he does and how it can help players of all levels. An hour of unfiltered talk full of stories, concepts and tips you need to start using right now. Before we start, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button if this channel ever gave you some valuable insights how to be better in gaming. It might look unimportant, but you help this channel grow, and I can use that leverage to approach bigger and better guests in the future to provide even more value to wider audience. Thank you for being part of this journey. Now enjoy the video. So, Jack, I wanna ask, what frustrates you the most when it comes to community reacting to your work or your team Vitality?
It's a good question. I don't know if frustration is the right word. Like, I try to remember the community is like the foundation of the game. The community is where all of our players have come from. It's where it's the people that buy the tickets, watch the streams, they support the game. So, when I'm a basketball fan, I like rugby. I do the same thing with my friends, like we're sitting in the pub, we're commenting, we're throwing out opinions. So, it's part of the game. Fans are always going to have opinions. They're always going to, have their point of view and want to have those conversations. So it's part of the life. Frustrating is not the right word. I think like this area of performance still is reasonably, I don't want to say misunderstood, but because it's new, people are still learning what role it plays. I think, the best way I can explain it is someone once said to me, like, if you sit down with an athlete and you ask them, like, what percentage of their performance is mental, like, you get so many different answers. Some people say, oh, it's 95% mental. Some people say it's 50-50. And then you ask them, like, if you think about a football player, well, how much time of your training do you put towards your football skills? They're like, well, a lot, many hours a week. How much time do you put towards your physical training, getting in the gym, your fitness? Yeah, hours and hours a week. Well, and how much time do you spend on the mental side of the game? And a lot of them would say, well, none or a tiny bit. And that's sort of the gap that performance coaches in Counter-Strike are trying to close at the moment. Now, like, for me, what percentage of it is mental is, it's hard, you can't say exactly, but, you look at the players that I get to work with, Robin, Matu, Shahar, William, I mean, Dan, as a younger Dan, was probably more, but now he is more mental because he's our leader and he's more focused. But a lot of those guys, like, they've got natural talent, right? And that might be 50% of what makes them great is their natural talent. And then they spend hours and hours and hours developing their skills. And that's probably another 30%, 40% of how they got to be so good. So we're only dealing with the last 20 to 10% in terms of what we can help the players optimize and maximize. But everyone agrees that there's a mental element, and it's not just on or off. I mean, it's not just on the server. There's also stuff you can do outside the server to help develop. And that's also an area where, when you think of esport, where it's trailing a bit behind professional sport, where players come through an academy, they know what it means to be a pro. A lot of young players have been self-driven. They're grinding the game. They're driving their own development, and then all of a sudden they're in a team. And now they've got to learn how to be a pro, which is not. It's its own set of skills. How to be a professional. The life is difficult. The challenges of being in a professional team are difficult. It's a whole set of skills. So, if people think the role is useless or doesn't contribute much, like, they're entitled to that opinion. There are going to be people that think the coach is useless, the analyst is useless, the IGL can't call, like, everyone. So frustration isn't the right thing. Like, it's just part of the life.
It's exactly why I ask this, because players think you are extremely valuable, while fans or casuals, they don't see the tangible results of your work. So I was asking the question, how do we bring, thanks to this interview, how do we bring these two extreme opposites kind of together and make it more equal ground to discuss? But maybe even you accepting meeting me here is going to, give value to those who are actually, okay hearing that value, and maybe we will change their mind. So let's get into it. We just celebrated New Year and people start setting new goals, obviously. And I want to hit level 10 on FaceIT, or I want to get 3000 ELO, whatever it might be. So let's talk about that. How to create goals properly, how to make them achievable, but challenging as well.
It's a really good question, because it's something I've had to grapple with our team over the break. We've just had an amazing year, and we've got to figure out, how do we set new goals? Like, what goals can we possibly set that make any sense, right? So I've done a bit of research on the science. I put that in inverted commas. Like, the research around goal setting in sport, in performance, in business, in life, or whatever, is constantly evolving. You've got your SMART goals. I'm sure people have heard of those. But honestly, what I would say to people that are thinking about setting, like, whatever you do, the process of setting goals, number one, is the most important thing you can do. Doesn't matter how you do it. If you go online and find a goal setting theory and you follow it, you're going to be better off than if you don't do any goal setting at all. The other thing I would say to people is, the second part of SMART is actionable. Your goals will be the outcome of your behaviors and habits, right? So you need to, if you set the goal, okay, I want to be FaceIT level 10, the next thing you got to do is identify what you need to do to get there. So one thing a player could do is, and everyone's got different access to resources. If I was a player and this was my goal, and I had, the resources to get some help, I would see if I could get a coach to review some of my VODs and give me some key areas for development. Identify the things that are stopping. Because if you were to FaceIT level 10 is here and you're currently in 8, and you be like, do you know why you're not able to get to that next level? Like, do you know, is it your movement? Is it your aim? Mm-hmm. And I think this is something that, again, I mentioned before, not having it, or academy systems only really starting to take shape. A lot of players grind the game, they put in the hours, and that's fantastic, but there's not a huge amount of intentional reflection on what's happening in those games. When you have, a 30 bomb, why did that happen? Like, and It might be because you're playing a particular position on a map that's your favorite position to play, or you're playing with a teammate that's now playing really supportive of you. Like, what are the elements that contribute to your success? And then what are the elements that actually, or patterns you see when you're not succeeding? So you might identify, okay, like, when I play with, 3 people that I know, I play better because I like the team play, right? So or it might be more individual. Yeah, my movement is the thing the coach has said, your movement is one area you could really improve that would help you get to the next level. Or is it your aim? So once you've identified, like, some key, so what I would call performance goals. So you got your outcome, which is I want to be FaceIT level 10. Your performance goals are like, okay, for January, February, March, I want to improve my movement. Now what am I going to do that? What tools can I use? Is it surfing? Is it, there's other tools out there. Some of our players use Refrag. I'll give them an unintentional plug there. Like, just playing and grinding FaceIT it's not a bad thing to do, but you don't get to really hone in on some of the individual skills. And I'm not talking about, going from playing 8 hours of FaceIT a day down to doing 8 hours of surfing a day. Not at all. But it might be like, okay, well, every day I'm going to do half an hour of aimbots because that's something I want to improve. Right? And then in that, you can set your goals, like, how many headshots can I hit in consecutively without a miss? You can make it little games, stuff like that. So to summarize, I probably went all over the place there. To summarize, you set your outcome goal. You need to identify the key skills you want to develop and set some performance goals. And then you want to identify the clear actions that you're going to take to get to that next level.
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense. It's kind of, you have to plan it. You can't just say to yourself, like, yeah, I'm going to be level 10 by the end of January. I mean, not January, but like February. And then you will not think about the journey, the task list to kind of get there, right? So you always have to kind of plan it, even though it might sound a little bit like cliche or anything like that. But that's just how goal setting really work. But not only about goals. In New Year, also a lot of players are thinking about, new healthy habits or new routines probably. Can you give me an example of a thing or activity that any player could start doing at home and it yields guaranteed results over some time?
Like 100%, the three foundations of performance: your sleep, your nutrition, and physical movement. So, and I know these are not easy for everybody to look after. It varies from person to person. Sleep, especially can be difficult if you're at school, you're studying, you're working, and the only time you have to grind is in the evenings. I know people get stuck in that cycle of, you work your 9 to 5, you get home at 6 o'clock, you play from 6 until midnight, now you're going to sleep and you've been on the PC forever. So you don't need to have perfect sleep hygiene, but if you really want to see your performance consistently improve and reach a consistently high level, getting 8 hours of sleep a night, following good, we use the term sleep hygiene. So things like trying to get the same 8 hours of sleep every night. These things, and this is not easy to do for everyone, I appreciate that, but that is like the number one thing that is going to see you improve. People will ask, like, well, is it better to sleep 8 hours consistently or better to grind an extra 2 FaceIT games? Of course, I'm coming from a sports psychology performance skills background. I'm going to say get the sleep. It's a judgment call for each individual. Mm-hmm. Movement, I use the term movement instead of exercise. You don't, or even activity is a good word. You don't need to be getting in the gym. You don't need to be running, like trying to break your personal best for 5 kilometers. Of course, it can be great to be as healthy as possible. But what I'm really talking about is, like, are you getting up and moving around? Are you going outside for a walk? Do you like to play, 5-a-side football with your mates? Like, are you getting movement through your body on a day-to-day basis? So it can be as simple as getting up in the morning when you wake up and going for a half-hour walk, and that's your movement done, right? Of course, the healthier you are, the better you're going to feel, the better you're going to perform over time. So I would absolutely encourage people to think about looking after their health as much as possible. But as a bare minimum, if you can get up and go for a walk each day for half an hour, that is going to be really, and not just good for your physical health, but also good for your mental clarity. You're getting outside, you're getting sunshine, you're waking your body up. So doing that in the morning can be really good. The nutrition side, again, is probably the hardest one to look after, but our brain is an organ. It needs fuel, and making sure that you take care of that can help you over the long term. Now, again, like exercise, doesn't mean you can't have McDonald's. It doesn't mean you can't have a packet of crisps or a bag of lollies. I say lollies in Australia. People say candy or sweets. That's not it at all. It's making sure, if you want to lose 20 kilos and be the run 5Ks faster than you ever have before, that's when you start to consider it. For Counter-Strike purposes, you need to just make sure you've got a balanced diet, right? Like, of course, if people are struggling with their weight, then it can be really positive to make positive changes there. But it can be as simple as, like, adding some fruit to your cereal in the morning. Mm-hmm. It can be swapping out crisps for a banana once a day just to get nutritious, organic, or even organic's not the right, like fresh produce, when if you like having a steak for dinner, with some vegetables, and then you can have a dessert. It's not about, you don't need to count calories, you don't need to be super regimented, but it's like, are you getting the nutrients your body needs to do the task you're asking it to do? And this is something I think people underestimate about professional gaming. Like, it is, when you're playing a best of 5, it is incredibly draining, like physically, mentally, emotionally. It's not, you don't walk away from that feeling like you've just been chilling on the couch for 4 hours. You're drained. Being well fueled helps your body maintain its performance. Your brain needs nutrition to function. So if you are waking up in the morning, not eating, playing for 6 hours, by the end of that 6-hour stretch, you're going to feel far more fatigued, far more mental fogginess, slower reaction times. All that stuff is tangible. Like, it actually happens if you don't fuel yourself when you play.
Mm-hmm. Thinking about stuff that you just mentioned, those are kind of heavy lifestyle adjustments. So let's get into something more actionable. What activity, if done for 5 minutes daily, would have most improvement for a player? And this is not including stuff on PC, okay? Like practicing nades or hit the deathmatch or something like that.
So if you're only giving me 5 minutes, I would say go and buy yourself, I'll see if my one's floating around, it's probably in my bag. Go and buy yourself a notebook, and at the end of your day's play, when you're ready to wrap up, and you could even make it 2.5 minutes at the beginning, 2.5 minutes at the end. At the beginning, write down 3 things you want to get better at. So if you're going to play 3 FaceIT game, 4 FaceIT game of an evening, write down 3 things you want to get better at, or 3 things you want to do well in that game. I want to communicate. I want to be the best communicator on the server in all of my matches today. I want to nail all of my utility. I want to bring a lot of energy to the server, whatever it might be, right? 3 intentions for what you're going to do today. Now, bear in mind, this is if someone's looking to get better. If you just want to play,
of course,
have a good time, just go and play and have a good time. And I should say, players, even if you're trying to get better, you should definitely leave aside time just to enjoy the game. Don't make every minute you're on CS about improving, because you got to remember, you got into this game because you love it, right? You're playing with your mates, you're having a good time on the server. So make sure you do keep time for that. The second one would be, at the end of the day, you can do any number of different ways to reflect on the day, but something I always give to our players, we call it 3 up, 1 down. So 3 things you did well, 1 thing you want to improve on tomorrow. So 3 positives and 1 thing you want to improve on. If you want to expand on it, you can then write actions down. So what gave you the things you did well, and what's the thing you're going to do tomorrow to improve that one action.
If you're looking always for improvement, it can get really draining, because sometimes you don't see progress. There's going to be like weeks or months where you don't see a progress, and that is extremely demotivating. This is where the switch, which you just mentioned about finding time to have fun in the game, is so crucial. Like, don't try to squeeze every minute out of your free time into becoming better. Sometimes having more fun equals being better. So I want to talk about these things which we just mentioned, because to a lot of people, they don't seem like they matter too much, right? So there is this theory that the skill gap between the really good high elo pugger on FaceIT is skilled enough that he is able to compete with the best in the world. Like, I see sometimes Apex and ZywOo, they're playing a FaceIT together, right? And they just lose to, like, quote unquote nobodies, right? It just happens. So this is where small things make so much difference. This is where they compound, and the sooner you start learning them, the better like yield it will have over time. Do you agree with this as something that you're trying to preach to others? Is this something that you see lately, that the skill difference is so negligible that small things like these are crucial to win? Sorry for a quick interruption, but this video wouldn't be possible without mutual sponsor of this channel and Vitality, which is Skinland. So quick word from them. Whole point of this channel is to become better in Counter-Strike, and even in this segment, we can learn from the best. Vitality, the kings of 2025, have partnered with Skinland, which is also a sponsor of this video. Skinland is a platform to sell and buy skins, and Oh boy, skins are really a hot topic nowadays. After Valve's latest updates, many skins plummeted in prices, which could be a perfect time to get those you've been eyeing. Here's how to sell your skins. First, you drop your trade URL. Second, you click the little gift icon and use code STYKO to get $10 free when you sell $100 worth of skins. Next, you pick what you want to sell, enter your email, and choose a payout method. Thanks to Skinline's new instant payout system, you get your money right after the trade. No waiting for Steam's trade protection period. Or if you'd rather keep the balance, on Skinline, you can instantly use it to buy new skins. And buying is just as simple. With one of the biggest skin selections out there, you're sure to find your dream loadout. Just top up your balance however you like and dive into the market. Couldn't be more simple, right? Give it a shot, and big thanks to Skinland for sponsoring this part of the video.
Yeah, I think there's two things. Like, one is, so the skill difference, if you look at it purely through like the lens of how well someone shoots, sure, the skill difference might seem negligible, but I think often people look at that from the perspective of one FaceIT game, rather than what can you deliver consistently over the course of 6 months. The other thing is that the skills required to be a pro are different from the skills required to be, you know, an elite pug player. To be a pro, you need to function in a team. So, you know, and you see this in all sport. There are plenty of basketball players in the world that can go one-on-one with NBA players, but can't make an NBA roster. And it might be because they don't have the right mentality. They're not a team player. They, you know, give up when things get challenging, whatever it might be, right? And you know, if you talk to, like, again, I listened to a podcast with an NBA player recently, and the advice he gave was like, unless you're one of those elite guys. So if you're thinking CS wise, if you're a ZywOo, you're going to find yourself in the pro scene and you're going to be okay. For most other guys, if you get a chance in a pro team, the question you need to ask yourself, and the question you need to answer really quick, is how do I contribute to winning? Because if you can be a player that contributes to winning, you're gonna be good in tier one, because that's what we're there to do. We're there to win. We're there to compete. We're there to win. Of course, being an elite, a player with elite skill makes a difference. But if you are a player with elite skill but you don't contribute to winning, you're going to find yourself bouncing around teams. The second part of your question, like the other stuff that separates it, I think that is, yes, there's the ability to have the skills required to be a pro, but there is also the mental part of the game where you are able to, you know, like I can use Robin as an example. When Rob's joined our team, like he is so diligent with how he goes about his work. He has an incredibly detailed strat book. He's constantly updating it. He's constantly reflecting on his practice, on his performance. He's constantly back on the practice server looking for new ideas or how he could redo something. So that's the type of skills. Like Robin, very rarely would Robin make a mistake in a game and not within 20 minutes of being back in the practice room already have a solution for how he would do it differently the next time, right? And that's the sort of dedication, attention to detail that you need to drive like that high level performance at that game, because we see the meta change all the time, yet it's the guys that constantly adapt their game to always be in the meta that are always going to be in tier one.
Speaking about traits that you love seeing in your teammates, let's talk about some traits that instantly kill people's careers. Can you give me 3 which you hate the most and you see that are like almost the red flags?
I think, as I said, not being a team player. Like you're going to join a team, you know, everyone's going to have a different role in the team. Most teams will have a star player and there's an expectation that things are built around them. But you need to be ready to put the team before yourself. If you do that, and it can be hard, right? Because, you know, HLTV's putting out ratings. It's used as a really easy benchmark for player performance.
People have ego as well.
Yeah, and that can be. And the thing is, it's not. I don't disregard it at all, because teams do use it to make decisions, right? So you do need to be aware of it and mindful of it. But not being a team player, you have to have a growth mindset. you're coming into a team and you need to be ready to learn, adapt, accept that you don't know everything, be willing to ask questions. How can I get better? If you can't take feedback from your IGL, if you can't take feedback from your coach, it's going to be really, really tough for you to A, develop as a player and get better, but B, to find your place in that team. And they're there to help you. They want to win as well. So have that open mindset. Don't be closed off to it. The third trait, I mean, a lot of this stuff gets wrapped up in being a team player, be prepared. Actually, this is probably be prepared, right? If you've got theory starting at 10 o'clock, get on the server an hour before, make sure you refresh your utility, be the guy that knows control what you can control. You can't control headshots, but if you're making a leap into a tier 1 team or even into a pro team for the first time, if you forget a nade, if you forget a strat, that's on you, right? You should know all this stuff. You can sit down and if you need to memorize it, you can memorize it. You can ask questions of your teammates. You can ask questions of your coach. There's no excuse to not know the information you need to know.
Okay. And on the other hand, do you have in mind maybe 1 or 2 traits that are not talked about enough? Let's say something that you value extremely. Obviously, it depends from team to team, but something that sticks through, that you're going to be recognizable among pro players, or you from your background as working with athletes, something that just sticks in your mind and you think about that athlete, wow, that was great. I've never seen anyone do that. I would love to have that trait in every future teammate.
I mean, I've already touched on it, but humility is one, and it doesn't mean you can't have an ego, but it's about recognizing that you're part of something bigger than yourself. You put the team before yourself. William Messi is a guy like that where, we knew straight away, okay, this guy is going to add value. And, there were some tough times there, but the whole team always stood behind him because we could just see that he had so much more to offer than what was showing up at times. He's an amazing teammate. So you come across, when I used to work in professional rugby, it's hard to say exactly what it is, but you just, William is the perfect example. You just meet this guy who's I want to get better. I want to ask for help. I'll take any help I can get, but also all I want is for the team to win. That guy that's I don't care if I'm at the bottom of the scoreboard. If there are very few players out there that would do this. But, if you knew that you were going to have a 0.9 rating, but the team was going to win, can you be happy with that? And if you find someone like that, now, of course, it's a weird scenario to think about because it's hard for a team to win if someone's consistent. But
right,
theoretically, those guys that are I don't care what my rating is because I just want the team to win. And if I'm down there, then that's fine. It's those guys, okay, I can work with this guy. He's going to put everything into the team. You just get a special feeling from guys like that where, this guy's he's here for all the right reasons.
You're using a lot of your players as reference so far, but let's actually shift to Vitality and your work. So what is your work looking like in Vitality? What are you responsible for exactly? Let's say, what can we blame you for if some things don't go right? And I don't mean this obviously in an offensive way, but just to build a narrative here.
What could you blame me for? I guess the role is so broad. I would say, and look, the thing is, I'll tell you why I don't like this question, because it's gonna almost make me take credit for something.
Okay, yeah.
But if we were constantly struggling in big moments, I think the performance coach has to be singled out and questions have to be asked, right? When teams hire a performance coach, I think a lot of orgs have looked at traditional sport. I hate the term traditional sport. They've looked at sport and said, what can we borrow from these performance environments into Counter-Strike? You don't need a team doctor. You don't need a team physio. You don't need a team nutritionist, but the mental side of the game is just as big, if not bigger, in Counter-Strike than it is in sport. So, okay, let's go and hire a performance coach and see if they can bring something to the table. I think the assumption is that one of the areas that's our responsibility is we want the team, and I'll be really clear with this. One of my goals with our players is our level of performance should be consistent no matter the circumstance, whether it's, the first half of the first round of Blast Bounty Online or the final round of overtime in the major final.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal isn't like, of course, if you can get no one gets better in pressure moments. It's a myth. We remember the big moments. We remember when a player stepped up, but generally speaking, everyone's performance dips under pressure. How much can we reduce that dip, right? And if we dip by 5%, but the rest of the scene is dipping by 20%, we look amazing.
Right.
So the reason I hesitate is because I'm so blessed to have been able to work with this team. I'd like to think I've contributed a small amount to the success of the team, but I also inherited a really experienced team. They'd had work with Lars Robel prior to me joining the team. Dan had already won majors. Matu had won a major. Robin is super experienced. Shahar and Will are developing into very experienced players. So, we really stepped up in a lot of big moments this year. Melbourne, the Melbourne final gives me goosebumps to think about it now. And the reason I hesitate is because if I say, if we lose a final, you can blame me, it also means that then I should be deserving of the credit. And that's not true. If I contribute 1 or 2%, that's great. But yes, if we go into 2026 and all of a sudden we're finding ourselves struggling in the big pressure moments, then yeah, I think the microscope absolutely has to come towards me, and you've got to ask those questions.
For you hating that question, you answered it brilliantly, by the way. So let's get into some specifics. How are you directly helping players to be better? Let's mention examples from ZywOo, Ropes, maybe Apex. And one way you can tackle this question is, what was the last thing you spoke about regarding performance? What was the last conversation or one-on-one you had with these players, and what did you actually talk about there?
So we work quite informally. One of the benefits of, when I was working in a rugby club, we had, you have almost 40 senior players plus the academy players. You may not speak to a player on a particular day. So everything's booked in, time-stamped, all that sort of stuff. Here, we're together from breakfast until dinner, even afterwards. A lot of it happens really informally. So, we're not sitting down and having one-on-one meetings. Mm-hmm. It's the method I use, or what I say, is you got to meet the players where they are. So, Dan and I, as an example, Apex, almost all of any performance-related work that we do happens in the gym. So Dan is really committed to the last 2 years, he's been incredibly committed to his lifestyle and making sure that that's in check. And I think he's a really good example of how you can extend your career with positive lifestyle changes. But anything that I can't remember the last time Dan and I had a formal one-on-one, because we're in the gym 4 or 5 days a week together, and we're constantly talking about CS, about any leadership areas that he wants support on, any areas of conflict that he might need help with. And to be honest, I'll tell you a funny story, and this will give you a really good example into what life is like. We had our boot camp in Budapest. So we arrived in Budapest a couple of days early. We're in the practice room doing boot camp, and at the end of, we've done theory in the morning, we're scrimming during the day, we got time for the players to get outside, do some exercise, whatever. At the end of the day, we're doing our workshops on mentally preparing for the event. And we had one, and it was like being in a circus. The boys were tired. Everyone was misbehaving is not the right word, but it was like a bunch of naughty school children. And the next day, Dan and I had a really good conversation at the gym. I said, mate, my job is to provide value to you guys. If you think this is not a worthwhile use of our time, just let me know. And Dan was like, no, you're 100% right. We definitely need to do it. It's just at the end of the day, I'm exhausted. Everyone wants to chill. Like, it's just hard to find the time to do it. And then Dan basically turned around and said, like, I'll fix it. I'll be the leader on this. I'll like keep everybody in line. And the next couple of days, it was like we got really good work done. Yeah, they're tired, but of course, Dan then really helped me as the leader to deliver value for that. Because Dan and Remy obviously ex-Taz is our coach. Dan's like our emotional leader. Remy's big on the strategic stuff. He is a leader, as like you can see him in his the way he calls timeouts, how he supports the boys. But like Dan's the tone setter in a way. And also Remy's already, like, we work together as a staff team, and I wouldn't say the others are children, but I needed Dan to be the good big brother in that moment.
Okay.
And set a good example for the boys, and he did. So that's sort of an example of how, like, it's not confined to like one moment, one conversation. It's just a relationship, and so a lot of that stuff happens organically. I'll be completely honest. When it comes to Matsu and Robin, like, I check in with them periodically. Like, we're always talking about CS informally. Like, often I'm asking them questions. They have more to teach me than I have to teach them. But the fact of the matter is with Matsu and Robin, like, they both got to this level by themselves. They're self-driven. They've always done the work they needed to do. So, for me, it's constantly checking in with them, being like, what can I do to help you? Is there anything that I can do to add value for you today?
Right.
And often they're like, no, I'm all good. And it's a really fine balance between forcing something on someone, but it's like, Matsu's the best player in the world. It's not my job. And this is something I think a lot of performance coaches can struggle with, because it hurts your ego. It's not my job to turn Matsu into the world's best meditator. It's my job to provide whatever support he needs to be the world's best CS player. And if that means doing some breathing exercises, amazing. But if that's not something that he's going to engage in and want to do, that he doesn't think is going to help him, is forcing it on him going to have a positive outcome? So I don't force my players to do anything. I try to adapt everything to meet their needs. So sometimes it might be like, let's go play squash. Let's just go hit the ball around and enjoy some time outside in the fresh air. You've just got to be really, really adaptable, and use the relationships you built and the trust you build to meet them where they need it. But it's not my job to force anybody to do anything. I'm a Sherpa on the mountain. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I need to carry their backpack. Sometimes I can point them in the right direction. But at the end of the day, the players need to take the steps themselves. They've got to climb the mountain on their own. And like Robin's the best example. Robin has climbed the mountain on his own like so many times now. So for me, it's just about where can I help him? And we do a lot of team-based work where we build our mental game plan for the day. We identify what challenges we're going to face. We identify what strategies we want to use to overcome these challenges. We do it, game by game, tournament by tournament, season by season. So, there's a lot of that stuff gets brought in there as well. It's not like they're not getting exposure to the mental performance stuff. They're engaging with it at a team level.
Yeah, I mean, surely you do have some non-negotiables in Vitality, right? You said that you don't force players to work out, but do you track anything specific? For example, their sleep or team activities or team walks? Surely there must be some. I mean, it's great that you have this holistic approach and meeting players where they are, but surely there has to be some structure that is followed. I'm not sure how in-depth it is, so can you reveal something?
Yeah, so I mean, like, not forcing them to exercise, but yes, we do have mandatory team walk pretty much every day. we're together. And even when we're not together, like for instance, Blast Bounty, we'll jump on Discord and do it together.
Nice.
So we have stuff like that. To be honest, like I've toyed with the idea of tracking certain things, but again, you've got to ask yourself the question, like, what's the benefit of this? Like, what are you going to do with that information? How are you going to use it? What's going to happen with it? And I haven't yet come up with a case for doing it, if that makes sense, right? As I said, it's almost like a do no harm approach, So it's, if I have concerns about something that's related specifically to a player, we'll have a conversation around it. Our players are reasonably well bought in, so we don't have to force, we force the players to do, they have to do all the CS related stuff. And then when we have team sessions, and if I ask to sit down and talk with a player, they'll come and sit down and talk with me, right? So it's not like they're allowed to do, it's not like they're allowed to just do whatever they want, but we've got this culture at the moment that's really, everyone's bought into it. Everyone is willing to give their time towards things they think are going to be beneficial for the team. So, my thinking is, if you're a performance coach or a coach and you've got a team and you're trying to monitor people's diet, like, they're not, my feeling, to be honest, the player's not going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
If you're going to say, okay, no more junk food, right? And so, something we try to do in our environment is we'll minimize the amount of junk food in the practice room. But if Robin wants to go to the shop or someone wants to go to the shop and get themselves a treat, they're adults. Like, they're not babies. And that's the thing. As I said, I'm blessed. Like, these guys are adults. Shahar's our youngest at 22, and Shahar's incredibly professionally minded. Like, if you've met Shahar, you know that he can be a bit, a million different things happening at once, but he's incredibly curious about how does he maximize his level. So, we're not going to facilitate bad habits, but and if there are things that I have concerns about, we'll have those conversations. But again, as I said, these guys are adults. If they want to get, something from the shop that they, and shouldn't have isn't even the right word, right? Like, we have a reasonably healthy team, catering at a lot of these events is reasonably healthy. A chocolate bar, a can of Coke, a packet of crisps isn't going to hurt anybody. Now, if I had a player that was only eating, there are teams out there you see that don't eat the catering. They always go for Deliveroo or takeout. That's not us. So, if a player wants to, we're not going to, as a team, we're not going to provide them with junk food in the middle of a tournament. If we win an event and the boys want to celebrate with McDonald's, go for it. Right? I'm not about depriving the players of their joy. You don't need to be a certain weight or a certain fitness level to be an elite CS pro. So why even have that conversation?
There has to be something in it, because 2025 was extremely successful for you, obviously winning both majors, and that record-breaking first season while winning Austin is just, it's a dream come true as well for you, winning Grand Slam in Melbourne, which is obviously in Australia. So how do you sit down after that kind of a season and set the next goal? Because I want to ask, is it even a tangible goal, something you can actually quantify? Surely you didn't sit down and said to yourself, guys, we're going to do exactly the same next season. We're going to win 6 tournaments in a row and we're going to win the major. So how do you navigate this? And then obviously this is between the first season and second season in 2025. Now you probably did a similar talk because you won both majors. So let's start with the one after the Austin. What happened there?
So, I'll actually take you back to when I joined the team in November of 2023. So my first event with the team was Blast Fall Final. Then we had Blast World Final. We won both of those. Vitality wins Team of the Year. Matu wins a bunch of awards. We got players in the top 20. It's great. We had a boot camp in January of 2024, and we had this big talk. We're gonna build an era. It's gonna be amazing. Like, we're gonna win all these tournaments. We're gonna win more than 5. And obviously, 2024 was not the year that we had hoped to have, and it caused me to do a lot of reflecting. And going into 2025, when we did our goal setting and our vision for the year, it was entirely values-based, entirely behavioral, performance, process-based. We weren't like, of course, because when you set goals in this type of environment, like, everyone is saying, and whether it's Vitality, G2, Navi, everyone's saying, oh, we want to win trophies. So, like, okay, great. Like, what have we done there? So, for me, I don't know if we got ahead of ourselves in 2024, starting to talk about an era or any of that stuff. But in 2025, we spent a lot of time identifying and defining our values, and then clarifying what that means on the server, off the server, day to day. And we tried to really judge ourselves against those values more than we would judge ourselves against our results.
Okay.
Again, we got lucky isn't the right word, but Robin joined the team, which brought a huge amount of energy. It was a great compliment for Dan in terms of the way they work together in building, a shared understanding of the game and sharing the load. So that enthusiasm contributed. But so we didn't set out to say, like, I think we might have said we want to win, we want to win 2 trophies. We won 1 last year. Let's win 2 events. A really modest goal. Obviously, we have that crazy run, win the Grand Slam, 30-odd, best of 3 in a row, whatever it was, and the major. And to be honest, like, we as we prepared for the second half of the year, it was difficult to define the goals. We talked about Australis. I think they might have won 10 trophies in one season.
Yeah, I think something like that.
So we'd already won 7. So that was our outcome goal, was to win 10 trophies. Obviously, you have the big events that are earmarked, Cologne being the first one of the year, followed by Esports World Cup, which for the club was very valuable, and the major. And it was a very different experience the second half of the year. So, we definitely hit more adversity than we thought we would. I definitely think we had a little bit of winning fatigue, in terms of the level of commitment to a small tournament was slightly less than what it was in the first half of the year. But that isn't probably a fair thing, because we had tournaments where Blast Rivals, we just won the Grand Slam. We just decided, we're just going to come here and have fun. Let's just play CS and enjoy it. So it's a vacation tournament, right? Like, we're not going to ask the players to grind. We're not going to ask anybody to put in like any special effort. Chill, rest. Just recover from. We've flown to the other side of the world and back, won the Grand Slam. It's all good, and of course we just kept winning, right? So we caught this lightning in a bottle, and that was a big theme for us. Was like, this opportunity for this team, like, it is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Let's not waste it. And that first block of the second half of the year was rough, because it was 4 tournaments back to back. We had very little time to step out of CS, see the game and everything. Like, the coaches and Dan could talk more accurately about this, but I could see how difficult it was when you're playing pretty much every day to get that helicopter view and look deeper into the detail and see, like, why aren't the things that we want to working? Right? So that was exceptionally challenging. So I could see the stress it was putting on them, because we all knew what we were capable of. It just wasn't coming through, right? And we didn't have the time. You won't find. I mean, look, I've had the pleasure of working with Dan. I haven't worked with any other OGLs, but you're not going to find. I don't think you'll find like Dan and Remy and Matt together can solve problems. Like
Okay.
we always knew once we get a break, they're gonna resolve these problems and it's gonna be fine. And of course, we then come to EPL and win that event. So, but again, going back to like how we set our goals, like we were constantly talking about like, are we living our values here? And oftentimes we were. It just wasn't working out the way we wanted it to. We were being team first. We were competing as hard as we could. We were trying to be adaptable, but we weren't getting the results. And, Blast London, we very well could or should have won that event. And then it's a complete, and that's the thing with CS, right? It's kind of like football. One deflection and the game's changed, right? I think it was a missed Molotov, right? Like one missed Molotov, and that, like, all of a sudden you go from lifting the trophy to having to play overtime, having to play a final fifth map. How quickly your feeling and perception of that first 4 tournaments is if we won the last one, right? So it wasn't so much the goal setting that was hard. It was then how do we stay consistent despite now being reasonably or unreasonably frustrated with the results? Because our expectation now is up here. We're winning everything. So we should be winning everything. Now, all of it, and we had to say a number of times, semi-final, final are results that most teams would die for. And yet we're here as if the world's ending. So like, we're doing something right. We know that we can do better, but let's at the end of London, let's take a rest, pick ourselves back up. We know that, like, with this group, we've got the skill set and capacity to get it right. And of course we come to EPL and play some really good CS. And it was the same thing with China. It was almost exactly the same process. Something just wasn't clicking, but we knew it was going to be fine. And I think going into Austin, it felt like destiny. Going into Budapest, there was a huge degree of confidence, but there wasn't that, like, we knew we were going to have to earn it. We knew we were going to have to work really hard to get there. It was very different experiences.
Probably a lot of people tuning it this late into the conversation, they are very interested in what we're talking about. So what about you and consuming content personally? What do you listen to, or read? What content creators you like? If someone wants to learn more about how to become better, where would you point them?
This is actually a fantastic question, because something that I try and encourage our players to do, and I'll share them stuff on Instagram all the time of
nice
pages from whether it's other sports psychologists, whether it's coaches. They're like, look, our relationship with our phones, our relationship with content is a mess as human beings right now. But there is good stuff out there. And, I don't have any particular pages in mind, but like, if you're a player, this can actually be a nice tool for you. Like, go and search on Instagram. Twitter, I think, is a bit more chaotic. And I don't have TikTok, so I don't know what's going on TikTok. But like, you can search for sports psychology or, boost your performance. Like, go and find some pages and just flick through stuff. I think there's one called like Athlete Flow or something like that. And it'll be quotes from sports psychologists, quotes from players or whatever. But there's so much good material out there that can give you daily, not just motivation, but tips and insights. So you can find plenty of stuff out there. I will tell you, there is a podcast by a guy named Justin Sewer. He is, I don't know which team he's at now. He's a mental performance coach. He's been in Major League Baseball for years, right? And his podcast is called Increase Your Impact. And it's like 3 minutes, 4 minutes episodes. And like, if you want to do something once a day, like listen to those once a day. He just gives you these tiny nuggets of gold around sports performance. Like, that's brilliant. He's also on Instagram, but he does most of his stuff. The podcast is where he's got he's a huge library of stuff there. That's really good. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Like, I do consume so much of it, but it's all from all over the place. There's a brilliant book by a man named Trevor Moawad called Get to Neutral.
Okay.
No, it's called It Takes What It Takes, Getting to Neutral. And it's a fantastic introduction to what it takes mentally to be an elite performer. It's like a Bible, right? You can pick that up, read through it, and you'll get 90% of the work you'd get from a sports psychologist all right there. So that's a really, really good one. And he talks from his experiences. So those are two things I'd absolutely recommend.
It's so funny how a lot of performance coaches, they say that players should be off social media, they shouldn't scroll too much, and then there's you sharing on social media, on Instagram, reels with the players. But what you're essentially saying is to surround yourself with the content so algorithm kind of resets from whatever waste of things you watch on social media to kind of feed you a value, right? That is how you turn social media into a tool which, yeah, sometimes you get to scroll, but you get actually benefit from it, which I see really good positive. When I was still, competing in a team, I was constantly looking for nade lineups, and even the ones that I knew, I watched it anyway, just to remind myself. And then it naturally gave me some really, really cool pieces of utility that I immediately saved. And then in the next theory, when we were discussing that part of the map, right, we kind of we're looking for a specific net, and I already had it prepared. So it kind of gave me an advantage. So you can hack the social media in your advantage this way.
100%. And, for me, okay, I can tell you, I don't know if you've seen the Michael Jordan commercial where he says, I've failed over and over again in my career, and that's why I succeed, right? So I can tell you, I can sit here and say, failure is part of success. Or I can let Michael Jordan tell you, who are you going to take more seriously? I'm humble enough to recognize, use these tools at our disposal. The boys are on, and Matt, you nailed it there. I'm not trying to augment their algorithm, but if their algorithm augments so they get more of this, I'm happy. It's not like I'm sending enough to spend, but use the tools that are available to you. Right? There's so much free stuff out there that you can access and develop. And I talked before about a growth mindset. Be curious, look for things, engage with the material, and you'll find absolute gold out there. I would advise, take breaks from Twitter, especially take breaks from the forums on HLTV. I would actually probably say there's nothing worth reading on the HLTV forum. Don't get me wrong, HLTV, it's great. As I said at the beginning, the community is what supports our industry. So I'm not suggesting for a second, but there's very rarely anything that a player can take from that. No player is going to sit there and go, you know what? Actually, you are right. I should get a haircut, or I should have rotated faster on that. There's nothing on there that's going to necessarily be useful for your performance, but players are on social media all the time. We're not going to ban it. Let's try and utilize it in our advantage.
One last thing to make one topic that we've talked about today unforgettable for our viewers. And bear in mind, my average viewer is probably a teenager or young adult grinding the game, trying to improve. Maybe some are trying to go pro. So what would be one thing that you would highlight from today?
The one thing, okay, so when you ask me about what you can do in 5 minutes, the one thing, honestly, it sounds absurd. I'd say when you wake up, go for a walk. If you can do, even if it's only 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you're not going to notice the change. You're not going to feel like, oh, I played better today because I went for a walk. But I guarantee you over the long term, if you do that every day, 10, 15 minutes when you wake up, do whatever you want the rest of the day, that'll be the thing. The other thing, to be honest, it's a trope, but get yourself a journal and write about your CS. Even if it's as simple as today I played, Ancient and Overpass, and just put your thoughts down on the paper. Just dump it down on the paper. Commit to doing, I'm going to write one, if it's a little notebook like that, 1 page of dot points, like, oh, I had a sick round where I got an ace because, I heard, I got the sound cue, communicated with a teammate. Like, the thing that we really don't value, I'm going off on a tangent here, our awareness, like when we bring awareness to something, we often solve all our own problems. So it's building that skill of self-awareness will be massive for a young player in developing their game.
Jack, thank you for this. It was awesome to have you, and you're a great guy. I will see you around at the events, and thank you for joining us.
It's an absolute pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me.
Huge shout out to my coffee members for your continual support so I can make more videos like this for you. Their name is on the screen right now, and if you want to appear here too, check out my coffee page where you can gain tons of cool and exclusive perks at various tiers of membership. And when I say they're cool, I mean it. Give it a look, it's worth it. Thank you for making my content better and possible.